Bill Hybels, a pastor who recently retired from Willow Creek Community Church near Chicago, shared a story about his ministry when he began 45 years ago. He was, he did a church plant, and he noticed a parishioner who used to come regularly not coming anymore. But one day, he just happened to meet him. And they engaged in small talk, but he really wanted to know something. So he snuck this question: "Why aren't you coming to church anymore?" And the guy kind of chuckled. He says, "Bill, do you really want to know?" And Bill nervously nodded and said, "Yes." And the man said, "I've been going to church all my life. And depending on the time of the season in the church calendar, I know what the topic of the sermon will be. I know what songs you sing. I know what music you play, the decoration, special presentation, the program. It's the same thing all the time." It shocked him. But when he went back, he realized that was right. So Bill Hybels says one of the reasons why his church became so vibrant and so life-giving was that he took it to himself to make church new every Sunday. He made his effort because God is not God who's static, but God brings new creation to us every day. Someone once said, God of our understanding is just that, the God of our understanding. What we need is a God just beyond our understanding. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, the God who works in our lives just beyond our comprehension. Today's text, this is a bad thing too. If you have some Bibles that says, the story of doubting Thomas, as if that is the only interpretation what God meant when he put it in the Bible. But you know what? I'll tell you, this is not about doubting Thomas. It's about this fervent man who used to believe in something. He was holding on to it. Thomas was not doubtful at all. In chapter 11 of John, when Jesus was told that Nazareth was dying, and Nazareth lived in Judea, and he was going to go back, his disciple says, "Lord, don't go to Judea. Jerusalem, they're trying to kill you." And you know what Thomas said? He's just like a Marine. He says, "Let us go back with him so that we may die with him." I mean, that's the kind of person that he was. But the story communicates more than the doubt of Thomas. It's about someone who's so invested, so faithful, so loyal, so much so that he cannot see the new reality that God has presented to that person on that day. You know who reminds me of Thomas? There's a guy named Hiro Onada, one of the two last Japanese soldiers to surrender after World War II. The remarkable thing is that he gave up, in what year? 1974. Some 29 years after VJ Day on August 15th, 1945. He wasn't totally cut off when he was living on the island of Lubang in Philippines. He found leaflets announcing Japan has lost and everybody should surrender. But he thought that was a trick. He not only found them once or twice, multiple times. But on some occasions, because he'd been on that island for so long, he thought, there's no way this war could last this long. Maybe Japan lost, and the leaflets are right. But he did not want to believe that, so he continued. And the way he was found was very interesting. In 1974, a young, hippie Japanese man, his name was Norio Suzuki, and he said, I'm in search of Lieutenant Onada, a panda, and the abominable snowman. And in that order. This guy's a character, right? So he went to Lubang, Philippines, and found him. And told him that Japan lost, and he should come back. But you know what Onada told him? He says, I can't until my commanding officers tell me to relieve my duties. So the young man went back to Japan. He told the government, and the government found the commanding officer. His name was Major Yoshimi Taguchi, and sent him to Lubang, Philippines, and finally convinced Onoda to come home. He received a hero's welcome in Japan, but the country he found wasn't the country he left. He was very discouraged of the loss, the diminishing of Japanese traditional values in that society. And ultimately, he got caught up in some organization that tried to restore the monarchy of Japan and restore the military glory of Japan in World War II. Our story, Thomas, in my opinion, reflects Lieutenant Onada in that they both are holding on to something in the past and not wanting to embrace what God is doing today. For Thomas, he was holding on to the messianic version that was popular at his time. The cross and the resurrection was not even on the radar at the time of Jesus. It was something completely different. What they were looking for was a Messiah who would be like the King David, which they read in the Bible, or at worst, or at least, Judas Maccabee. When Thomas says, unless I put my hands in the nail marks, I would not believe, given his zeal and passion, you know what he was saying? He's saying, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to hold on to my idea what Messiah is going to be. And I'm going to keep trucking. And you know what? Unless I see proof otherwise, I'm just going to do what I need to do. Just like Lieutenant Onoda. You see, the Bible contains many stories to build up our faith. But you know what? The Bible also contains stories that breaks down our faith, that breaks down our assumptions, that breaks down the sacred cows in our lives. Because you see from what God is doing, all throughout the Old Testament, New Testament is a brand new thing. There was a young man who gave a TED Talk, called The Gospel of Doubt. According to him, he was telling a story. It was the eve of December 31st, 1999. He was 12 at the time. Although he felt unfair that Jesus would come back right when he became that tender age of starting his life, the Left Behind books, the End of the World preaching, and the tension in the Texas Baptist Church all pointed to this fact. He was convinced that Jesus was to come back that night. And they were sitting in that room praying and shouting and waiting for God to return. He not only prayed once, but twice, according to him, wishing that he would not be left behind. Then the hour had come. The clock strikes 12. Turns around. Everybody was still in the room. Disappointed, he goes home. He turns on TV, sees Peter Jennings welcoming the New Year's in each different time zone. And he said, oh my gosh, I should have known. Jesus would never come back on Texas time. It felt ridiculous, right? And then he felt hurt. But he did not stop believing. He thought he was believing the wrong thing, in the wrong way, with the wrong questions and the answer. So he started to believe in another thing. He started to believe in higher education when he arrived on the campus of Yale University at the age of 18. He thought, oh my gosh, all my broken dreams and my bleakness back home, I found the answer. And he studied hard. But on one winter break, somebody broke in his house, knocked him down to the floor, put a gun to his head, and says, I'm going to get you. And then he realized that his Yale education was not going to save him. But he still did not stop believing. Or he still believed. He held on when he became an intern for Lehman Brothers, 2008. So hopeful, he got this wonderful job. He called his parents and says, we're not going to be poor no more. But he witnessed this temple of finance come tumbling down. But he still continued to believe. He held on when he showed up as a DC, as a young staffer, for a voice calling out from Illinois who said, change has come to America. But the gridlock government, the polarized country, he became very disillusioned with politics. But he still continued to believe. He held on, kneeling at the altar of the American dream. He faithfully prayed to the God of success, power, and money. But time and time again, all these gods were dead. But he still continued to believe. He went on a pilgrimage to another Mecca, this time to Harvard Business School. But by then, he learned his lesson. He realized this is not the ultimate end to his journey. So one summer break, him and his friend on the summer of 2013 took an 8,000-mile trek across America and saw all the things that was real to him. And he decided to create this non-profit organization called MBAs Across America. But when he told the story, he was dissolving that. Because this is what he said. He says, I am not the Savior. I don't have all the solution. But you know what I've learned? By having all these idols and all these false beliefs broken down, that in the midst of the most awful times, there's always a way to confront our situation. And that's what I want to preach about. Today, I come to you the week after resurrection. Look around. Is it as crowded as Easter Sunday? And we could be discouraged. But I want to tell you something. Just like Thomas couldn't believe this new reality that God was doing through Jesus, I want to tell you, God is doing a wonderful thing today in his ways. I mentioned this, I want to preach this because many times, some of us, including myself, we have this fixed vision of how God could work in our lives. And many times, when that vision doesn't happen, we get destroyed. We get disrupted. And a lot of us, we don't say it, but we get P.O. at God. Why didn't you do that for us? Jesus, why didn't you continue your ministry like King David, but had to die? But what I want to remind you is that God is a God that's just beyond your comprehension. And he's doing a new thing today. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.